everyone happy Festivus? What is Festivus?
It's nothing. It's nothing.
When George was growing up, his father hated all the commercial and religious aspects of Christmas, so he made up his own holiday. And instead of a tree, didn't your father put up an aluminum pole?
Many Christmases ago, I went to buy a doll for my son. I reached for the last one they had, but so did another man. As I rained blows upon him, I realized there had to be another way. But out of that, a new holiday was born. A Festivus for the rest of us.
Am I the only one who thinks this is totally insane? Rob, we're fighting theological injustice here.
They're not using just weights and measures.
He said we have 50 listeners. I think he's being generous.
Read your Bible as interpreted by experts.
Rob, are you as shocked as I am?
It's nonsense. If you've given any money to this, you need to complain. You ask for your money back.
I don't know about you, but I find this annoying. What up? And shalom. Welcome to the Rob and Caleb Show. My name is Caleb Hegg. With me, as always, the Hav. What up, Hav? How's it going, brother?
It's going very well. That was funny. I love it. Well, while I was raining blows.
Yeah, exactly. Happy Festivus to you, man, and a happy Festivus to everyone out there in Radio Land.
The rest.
Festivus.
The show, the display of strength. What's it called? Where they wrestle?
The feats of strength.
Yeah, the feats of strength.
Awesome. Hey, what up and shalom to everybody out there listening live, everybody in the chat room, everybody watching on YouTube, and even if you're listening on demand, we say what up and shalom to you too. Let's get all the all the small details out of the way. The Rob and Caleb Show is brought to you by TorahResource.com. Torah Resource is a wonderful place to find all sorts of articles and anything you need to know about biblical, messianic, one Torah research. Find all sorts of great stuff there. And you can find free articles on our blog as well. You can listen to the radio station, which you should be doing right now anyway. And at our programming desk, Gary Springer, which he's not in the chat room today. He's slacking. Don't know what's going on with that. And you know who else is not in our chat room? Mark Randall. He's supposed to be running our chat room. And he's supposed to be, which apparently he is because we got people in the chat room. So anyway, those are the guys, helping us out from their respective locations. And Rob Roy in the chat room asks, what is the topic today? Good question. Well, since it is the week of the festival known as Christmas, every year Rob and I talk about something that has to do with the festival. And last year we did the origins of Christmas. This year...
Did we? I don't even remember.
Oh, yes, we did. Yes, we did. Last year we did the origins of Christmas. And this year
I didn't think we ever talked about it before.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. And so this year, actually, I think there's going to be some backpedaling, at least on the other end of the mic for us. I don't know what that was. I apologize. It seems as though Rob has come to some new conclusions, and he's been swayed by different forms of scholarship. But before we do that, let's see here. Hang on just a second. I have to find... Yeah, I think this is it.
It's Rob's Gematria.
Give it to us, Rob. What do we got for Gematria this week?
Caleb, is that your voice?
Yes, it is.
Here we go. For 105, we have a few special ones. Probably my favorite. Oh, I'm gonna save my favorite to the end.
Yes.
Elohim Echad. Elohim Echad.
God is one.
But you have to spell it with, you can't just use a cholam. You have to use cholam vav. Aleph lamed vav. Hey, yod mem. Then we have, this is funny, Chag HaChanukkah. the Feast of Hanukkah.
Wow. That is some major coincidence.
Okay, here we go. Yod. If you spell out the letters Yod, Hey, Vav, Dalid, Hey, the way, in a certain way, it's the spelling Judah, Yehuda, if you spell all the words out. And then Kisei David, the throne of David.
Yeah.
Okay, here's my favorite. Haya Pe. There was a mouth. A mouth was. So maybe that was it. That's a sign to you because you're the loudmouth.
It's a sign to loudmouth.
Yeah. So anyway,
I really feel like we need a disclaimer for our gematria segment.
No, we call it gematria fun.
Gematria fun.
Fun with Hebrew alphabet.
The problem is that there's so many people in the messianic Hebrew roots, realm that believe in gematria and believe in Paleo Hebrew interpretation.
That's why we're going to flood it. We're going to flood the market. We're going to saturate the market with our fun with gematria.
Should I even bring this email up that I was talking about beforehand? Maybe not.
We have so much to talk about.
Okay. I got an email that really ticked me off. No, it's okay. I got an email that upset me, but this once again is going back to Itzhak Shapira. The more I look at his stuff, the more I just think he's teaching a false gospel. And
here we go.
Everybody keeps saying that Shapira is bringing all these people to the Messiah, but my question would have to be, what Messiah is he bringing them to? Anyway, okay. So let's move on then. Let's not touch on it. So here's what normally happens in our week. I start preparing for the show usually the day after our last show airs, and thinking about different topics and whatnot, and I'll hit some of the blogs and different websites online. Monday is a day that is fully given for me to figure out our show topic, try to find links, try to find sound bites, all that kind of good stuff. And then Tuesday, if there's anything that I still need to research or whatnot, then Tuesday, it bleeds over into Tuesday. Hopefully I'm wrapping up all that kind of stuff by Tuesday morning, and then I'm on to other things, and then we record on Wednesday morning. Usually what happens is I'm the person who puts the show notes together. I'm the person who gets all the links. I usually am the one who gets all of the sound clips and all that kind of stuff, because basically I'm producing the Rob and Caleb show as we air it. However, this week is quite a different scenario altogether.
So this show will be underproduced and
no
sound clips.
Now I'm still gonna produce the show as I am doing right now, but the difference is that. Thank you, ladies. The difference is that I've taken a back seat this week to Rob's research.
Caleb's letting me drive the car for once.
I'm letting him drive the car for once. So if you wonder why this show is so much better than all of our other ones, that's why.
No, I don't think that. Anyway, Caleb and I are coming at this from a little bit different angle. We're going to talk about paganism. Is Christmas pagan? Basically, that's our topic today. Christmas and paganism. And we want to jump into the weeds a little bit.
And we disagree.
Yeah, exactly. So what it looks like is going to happen is that we're going to dive into some of the research that we've been looking at recently, and Caleb and I are understanding it a little bit differently, and this is good. So it's some healthy dialogue. We're glad that our listeners are going to be able to download some of the key pieces of information that we're chewing on. So you can. And while you're listening to us or after or whatever, you can go and look at the same articles.
Now, actually, you say that. However, the main article that I'm pulling from, or that I'm going to look at with you, that we certainly are disagreeing on, is this one by Stephen Hidgmans?
I think it's Hyman. I think it's silent J.
Okay, so this one actually came in PDF form to me, and I don't think that we have a link to this.
The link. I gave you a link.
Did you? Okay, I put every link that you get. Okay, hang on just a sec.
The third one. Check the bottom link that you posted for the listeners in the show notes.
You know what I don't have here? I think that I no longer have elevator music. What happened to my elevator music?
That's okay. I'll while you look for that, Caleb, I'll just say basically how this started. This, Caleb and I and Tim and Gary were members of what's called the ETS, Evangelical Theological Society, and they send out a quarterly journal. I think it's quarterly. Looks like this. It's just kind of, bland. It shows up in the mail. It's like wrapped. It takes forever to break the plastic, to get in there. So this was this summer, June, late spring, June 2015. And I'm like, okay, article by Daniel Block on the Place for My Name. Excellent article. I was just reading through this. And sure enough, here on page 299, there's an article by Kurt M. Simmons, a person I've never heard of before, called The Origins of Christmas and the Date of Christ's Birth. And I'm like, wow, the Christmas in summer kind of thing. So I'm like, okay. So this summer I read through that. I remember talking to Tim on the phone. We were both really frustrated with some of the things in this article, particularly its use of rabbinic literature to try to back up at some of its pictures. But in any event, this article is available for those who, I think you can contact the Evangelical Theological Society and get a copy of the article, or you can just buy this particular volume. It's volume 58, number 2, or you can just subscribe and you'll get it every quarter.
Sorry, that was a mistake. That was on accident. Okay. I did not mean to do that.
In any event, one of the even though I was disappointed in many things of this article, I benefited from it in certain ways. It helped me be more granular, if you will, in my conceptualization of the history of the development of Christmas. So and then I kind of put it on the shelf. I forgot about it for, we have other fish to fry here. And then we're coming into the season, and it's like, you know what? Let me pull that article back out. And so I sent a note to Caleb. Caleb's got the same journal. I don't think he had looked at it till then. And then also looked at some other, a particular scholar whose focus is ancient Roman religion. That's his specialization. He wrote an article on Sol Invictus, the invincible sun, and early iconography and its association with Christmas. So, and that's the article that should be downloadable.
No, it's not actually, unless you have a academia.com.
No, I think you can connect through Facebook. I think it allows people who have Facebook to download it.
Oh, okay. So there you go. So that to Bonnie.
If you absolutely cannot get it, just let Caleb or me know,
and we'll send it to you.
And we'll email it to you.
But yeah, for those in the chat room who Bonnie particularly who's having trouble logging in or to it, go ahead and try to log in with Facebook if you have a Facebook account. Otherwise, you can set up an academia.com membership very easily. It's free.
So. Anyway, so the fuel for our show today is kind of started with this article, and then some of the other historical work that we've looked at.
Now hang on just a second.
Put this together.
I think we should clarify real quick, because you said the question is Christmas pagan? I think that's not actually what the show topic is about. There are certain things
we don't even agree already.
Yeah, see, exactly. There are certain things within the within Christmas that I think you and I both would agree are obviously pagan. For instance, a Christmas tree, mistletoe. I apologize. Hang on.
Okay.
There we go. Sorry about that. So I mean, there's obviously things that are pagan that have been brought into
but what I mean is what we're doing is we're saying, exactly. It is a problematic title, and the reason the title is problematic, I think, is people just associate it though. They think of it that way. They think there are people that I've encountered that say Christmas is pagan, that it's a pagan festival.
I'd agree with that.
So what I want to do is, that's why I was using this picture of us getting down into the weeds and see if we can separate our discernment, clarify some things. What is pagan? What is not? Is it originally a pagan feast that has been taken over? And so before we divide, and I have actually, as Rabbit Trail Rob, I know to be, I do have an outline.
I know it has only taken us 2 full seasons into the 3rd season to get Rob to finally write an outline for one of the Rob and Caleb shows.
Okay, here we go. But before we get into the outline, this morning I'm going to post a Yahoo article here.
Uh-oh.
Did it work? Okay. There's a ultra right wing, I guess they call him, rabbi in Israel. And he refers to Christians as vampires.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so this is I posted a yahoo.com news. It's the title of the article is Jewish extremist leader wants to ban vampire Christmas from Holy Land.
Okay.
And so the vampires, of course, is the one small thread of Jewish tradition, the picture of Christians as celebrating the Eucharist as drinking blood. So that's what that is. It's a parody of believers in Yeshua.
Wait, when did that start?
That goes back. Well, I know it's in the medieval times, but even there was in the early church, there were times of people saying that Christians were cannibals because they ate flesh and drank blood.
But okay, so is it a specific is it a specific sect though? I mean, you're not saying that Christians actually drink blood on Christmas.
No, I'm saying that this is a parody
I see.
that this extremist is using it's a caricature. You know what I mean? It's like an exaggerated caricature. It's a polemic.
I got you.
Right?
Okay, I'm with you.
There's hostility.
I'm with you.
He has hostility, and so he's using these kinds of pictures. It's kind of like what's the Charlie Hebdo of pictures of Muhammad or things like that. Make the picture really exaggerated. Anyway, Benzi Gopstein, he's part of Lahava, ultra Orthodox Jewish teacher who is. He says the Catholic Church is the enemy of the Jews. I mean, they're real hard line. They are absolutely against Jews marrying non-Jews.
Okay, but hang on.
They believe all Arabs should be kicked out. Our enemies of the state of Israel need to be kicked out. But basically, here's a characterization. Christmas has no place in the Holy Land, he says. The mission of those vampires and bloodsuckers remains. If Jews cannot be killed, they can be converted. And then he says, we must remove the vampires before they drink our blood once again. So this this guy's been arrested. I mean, and they're tied with different violence, religious violence against Muslims and Christians in Israel.
Okay, but why do you bring it up?
Because why does this guy think Christmas doesn't belong in the Holy Land?
Because, well, I mean, obviously, especially from a non-Jewish perspective, no matter which way you slice it, whether or not it's a Christian holiday or a pagan holiday, it's pagan in the eyes of the non-believing Jews, right?
Right.
Okay, so
exactly. So this is the point. The point is that, and you can look at the Jewish Defense League and their hard line. What are their basic, or what is their basic stance? They have like basic core doctrine that they teach, which is preserving Jewish identity. That every Jew should be educated enough to be called a rabbi.
Okay, but at the same time, shouldn't we? I mean, let's be fair. The Torah tells Israel as a whole that they're supposed to basically run paganism out of the land. So to me, it sounds like while obviously this guy's extreme, and while obviously he's taking measures that are not probably sanctioned by the Torah itself. It seems like the motive is actually, I understand the motive, which is to rid Israel, the land of Israel, of paganism and rid Israel of the high places, right?
Okay, but in so doing, he's conflating all believers in Yeshua, right?
So he's seeing them all as Catholic. He's seeing them all as Catholic, essentially.
Yeah. Basically,
he sees the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which I would totally agree is pagan, as the standard of normal Christianity or normal Bible believing Christians. He sees as the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Okay, so
I'm with
anyway,
you.
I just thought this is just interesting news, that we have the issue of an idea of what is true Torah practice, and we have something called Christmas, and they're blending together in the land of Israel. And then you have, because there's over 100,000, I think 100 and something thousand Israelis who are Christian. Now, how many of those are Jewish? How many of those are not? I don't know. But in any event, that just kind of shows in today how this tension can manifest. Now, back now to the outline. Now where did I put it? Okay, here we go.
Wait, I got elevator music for you if you need it.
Okay, so basically, I'll give an outline of the whole show. Okay, basically, I'm hoping that we can talk about two different things, and they could be whatever order you choose. Okay, one is the reformers who rejected Christmas. What are the claims that the reformers had? Because we don't really have any rejection. We don't have any internal, I'm just going to use the word Christian for lack of a better term, internal Christian criticism of Christmas until the Reformation. And so it's like, okay, let's look at that. What is in terms of Reformation history, who were those that were critical of it and why? And then I think one of the links has a guy who sees himself as like a true Presbyterian, and that's is it Kevin Reed or something? I don't remember the guy's name. He has a series of accusations, the reasons why, what's wrong with Christmas, and why it should be absolutely rejected by Presbyterians, which is a kind of a branch of reform, right?
Okay, so just launch into it. Start.
And then the next part is I want us to go back and look at the basic history then. When and why did December 25th become Yeshua's birthday? Was it, and then there's three models that I want to look at. One is it religious syncretism? In other words, we're just going to take a little bit from this religion, a little bit from this, blend it together, make a new thing. Some people take that approach. Some people take that it's astronomical or cosmic event. So there's actually a scientific rationale that has to do with the sun, that it's independent of the religious worship of the sun. And then there's those who will say that it's actually a tradition received from the earliest church. And that's the website that we put up, December25th.info. This person, he's the guy who wrote the article, by the way, in the JETS, in the Evangelical Theological Society that I got this summer. So even if you don't get that article, you might be able to download it.
Wait, hang on just a second.
It's DEC25th.info.
Wait, hang on, Rob. The guy who wrote the thing in JETS is Kurt Simmons. The guy who wrote the article that you're talking about is Stephen Hidgmans.
No. There's another. The other link we have is the December25th.info. It's the website of the same guy. Yeah, those are two different guys.
Okay. Anyway, so enough with the outline. Get to it.
Okay. So we're going to look at those. That's kind of the parameters. So let's start with the Reformation. I think it would be cool to see, and people might be really familiar with this. And eventually, as we get to it, I can share a little bit about what kind of got my attention this summer that got me to kind of rethink some of the assumptions I had made about it. And so I think most people know that Martin Luther, although he was an important player in the Reformation, he basically assumes, and from what I could find looking through Luther's writings, he basically assumes the 25th to actually be Jesus' birthday. And I wasn't able to find anything in Luther where Luther was questioning this. And as a matter of fact, he gave a Christmas Day sermon, preaching on Luke, the nativity story. So as far as Luther doesn't seem to have any polemical issue with Christmas. But when we get to John Calvin, there's an interesting thing that starts to develop where Calvin is interacting with the larger community that has basically outlawed it. And his writings, and this is one of the links that we have, by Kevin Reed. You can see he's got several quotes from Calvin, where Calvin's kind of ambiguous. He's not coming right out and saying we shouldn't be celebrating Christmas, but he does say that. Let's say, for example, he says, "I come now to ceremonies." This is Calvin. "Which, while they ought to be grave attestations of divine worship, are rather a mere mockery of God, a new Judaism, as a substitute for that which God has distinctly abrogated, has been reared up by means of numerous puerile extravagancies." And he goes on to say, "The immense number of ceremonies which God by his authority abrogated once and for all have been revived." And he mentions people are in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. So the idea of these extra feasts that have been added by the Roman Church are rejected by Calvin. He never explicitly mentions Christmas in anything I was able to find. And so he's in the 1500s, so 16th century. Then you go to John Knox, who was in Scotland, another important reformer. Absolutely. Now he met Calvin. He's also in the 1500s. He comes right out against it. He says all those feasts that the papists have invented, right?
That God's words damn your ceremonies is evidence. These guys, man. You know what the funny? Okay, hang on just a sec. Side note, I'm going to go on a rabbit trail for a second. Okay, so you know how we get. I mean, people send us email all the time. You guys are so harsh on people. Oh, you guys. I can't believe that you guys would say that. Oh, how can you speak against people like that? Man, if people would read some of the reformers, I mean, come on, these guys, they are just in your face. Like, dude, Martin Luther, he straight up calls people names.
Have you ever seen the blog Pyromaniac?
No.
Yeah, there's a pyromaniac, and they're all reformers and let his word be like a fire. And they're totally. They have a blog, and they quote all these these really I don't know real sharp-tongued and witty. They're funny too.
Oh, they're hilarious. They really know how to use it. Yeah, they know how to use the English language. There's no doubt about it. Okay, go ahead.
So John Knox goes on. He says, as the feasts, as they term them, of apostles, martyrs, virgins, of Christmas, circumcision, epiphany, purification. Because remember, there was a feast. The feast of circumcision is 8 days after Christmas, right?
Now, that actually seems to be quite early.
So they say, which things?
The feast of
circumcision?
No, the Feast of the Epiphany. It seems to be set date
exactly.
Quite early.
But for John Knox, this is all, he sees the whole thing as invention of the popes. He says of the papists or the Romans. They should be we judge them utterly to be abolished from this realm. And then it says, affirming further that the obstinate maintainers and teachers of such abominations ought not to escape the punishment of the civil magistrate. So now John Knox, this is 16th century, it's a crime. I mean, he's advocating that it's a civil crime to keep any of these Roman feasts.
Affirming, I'm sorry, I got to read this. I mean, some of these are just, this guy, John Knox, he's awesome. Affirming further that the obstinate maintainers and teachers of such abominations ought not to escape the punishment of the civil magistrate. Woo! Yeah, get him, John. Okay.
Yeah, you're going to jail.
Yeah.
Like the feast police show up, right? Okay, then I've got a quote from Charles Spurgeon.
We're watching, hang on just a sec. I'm watching the chat. Hang on just a second. I'll turn Rob's voice up. Why is Rob's voice quiet to everyone? Okay.
Check.
Okay. Hang on just a sec. Let me finally play what I... Give us a second here.
Check.
Say something again.
Check.
All right. Okay, go ahead.
All right. I'll try to be a little more. I think it's, who is it who said that you're like Wayne and I'm Garth? So I'm kind of like, like soft spoken.
Everybody in the chat room thinks that we aren't looking at the.
Yeah. Well, they're behind our audio though.
Yeah.
There's a lag.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, Charles Spurgeon. I don't want to spend too much time, but I just wanted to point out that Christmas is not without healthy protest in the Reformed tradition. So Charles Spurgeon in the 1800s, he says, certainly we do not believe in the present ecclesiastical arrangement called Christmas. First, because we do not believe in the Mass at all, because Christmas, right? But abhor it, whether it be said or sung in Latin or in English. Secondly, because we find no scriptural warrant whatever for observing any day as the birthday of the Savior. Right?
Boom.
And consequently, its observance is a superstition because not of divine authority. And another, I found also in Spurgeon's commentary on Psalm 81, he says, when it can be proved that the observance of Christmas, Whitsuntide, and other popish festivals was ever instituted by divine statute, we also will attend to them, but not till then. It is as much our duty to reject the traditions of men as to observe the ordinances of the Lord. So this is Spurgeon, 1800s, in England, and he is teaching that basically, just as John Knox did, popish festivals. That's basically the same language.
Why don't the Reformed churches today take into? I mean, my Facebook news feed is just packed full of Spurgeon quotes and Spurgeon memes. So why aren't these evangelicals putting up these memes of?
Here's why. There became if you follow the history of the Protestant or the Presbyterian Church in America, right around the 1900s. After Spurgeon, basically, early 1900s, there's a shift of like, okay, maybe there's some redeeming value in Christmas. And so, and it's interesting because in the 1906 Book of Common Prayer, there is prayers for Christmas, but it stresses, there's a whole intro, it says these are voluntary, there's no obligation for you to pray these prayers. So there was like a statement that this is not official church doctrine, but we're going to provide you prayers for it anyway. Does that make sense? So they're kind of building an in-between space between saying it's not obligatory, these are not commanded in Scripture, so it's purely voluntary. But if you want prayers for Christmas, here are some. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That happens in the early 1900s, and then I think it just continued.
But even then, I understand that there was a move from these reformers who now are saying Christmas is bad to what we have today. But the point is that you have some of the great.
Yeah, you're saying that people who love Spurgeon so much.
Yeah, and Calvin and Spurgeon. They're sitting down at the Christmas tree,
and even John Knox probably.
Yeah, and they're not going to give just weights and measures. There's Rob's just weights and measures to Knox and Spurgeon and Calvin, who obviously are speaking against Christmas.
Yeah, Calvin is the one that's a little bit. I wasn't able to find any explicit quote to the degree we see with Knox or Spurgeon, and there's other guys as well in that tradition that you can find online. But these are the big hitters, I suppose.
And by the way, for the people in the chat room who are saying that they want us to post links, look at your show notes. If you're not getting the show notes, then that's your problem, not ours. Sign up for the show notes. Okay, so let's move on. Let's go to, I want to go to this because now I just looked at the time. I cannot believe we've been talking for 35 minutes. Good gracious. Let's move to the crux of the argument. So this thing that you can, the article that you can download.
No, wait a minute. I want to go over the basic claims against Christmas by this guy who's got this website, Kevin Reed. He's really researched this out. He's of the strong Reformed tradition, It's one of the websites on our show notes. I just posted that again for the people in the chat room, our show notes page. Basically, these are them. These are his claims. And they might pretty much cover all the claims. There's some redundancy. The first one is the scriptures, both by precept and example, forbid the use of any form of worship which is not ordained by God. That's his first claim. Okay? Scriptures
Where does he?
forbid...
Where does he get that?
This is his summary. His summary criticism.
Okay.
Now, he's a present-day Presbyterian who's anti-Christmas.
Got it.
I'm assuming he's in America, and he's trying to convince other people to stop. So he would be a good guy to probably have on the show in the future, maybe next year. But I just found his website, just the other day. So the first basic claim, scriptures forbid worship not ordained by God. Okay, that's the first one. And Christmas has no biblical warrant. It should be rejected. Okay. Number 2, Christmas has brought an infusion of paganism into the church. Right? Well, here's the interesting thing.
Agreed.
Back to the first one. That why would reformers hold on to Sunday worship then? Okay, so here's
and why? Okay, yeah, but even more
Okay,
so,
so
was David sinning by dancing before the Lord?
Okay, well, here we go. So number 2 was admixture or mixed things, right? You've got idolatry mixed in with worship of God is seen as being part of Christmas. 3,
Agreed.
Christmas remains a monument of the superstition of the Church of Rome.
Ooh.
Monument, and he pulls on the Protestant tradition to say the Pope is the Antichrist, is the man of sin. So remember, and that goes back to Martin Luther. Martin Luther taught that the Antichrist is the papacy. And I think there's, out of the Protestant tradition, I think Seventh-day Adventists might say that the Catholic Church is...
Well, we got a lot of people within the Messianic
Don't
movement
quote
who
me on
believe that the current Pope is either the Antichrist, but that might actually play into, I could take, I wouldn't think people as, maybe, I'm not even going to say that people are wrong about that because who knows, but, I have my skepticisms when people say, oh, this new Pope is the Antichrist. Saying that the papacy in general is the Antichrist,
that has its roots in reform.
I might be able to get back on. I might be able to get on board with that a little bit more than a current pope is said Antichrist.
But get this language. This guy puts all remnants of papal superstition must be eradicated from the church, including favorable references to the word Christmas. The term Christmas itself lends credibility to popery because of the Mass.
He's right.
And he says God demands that his people purge their language from the terminology of corrupt worship. Okay, well then we'd have to, if we're going to we got to get rid of the names of I know, Lee White and all these other guys have written.
Lou White?
Lou White, Fossilized Customs, don't say Monday because it's Moon Day or Sunday is, so on and so forth. But then we have to eradicate stuff out of the Tanakh.
Out of the Torah.
Because we have Tammuz, we have all these names that are adopted from Babylon. So obviously we got to be careful when we're using with these precision instruments, these sharp instruments. Okay, here you go. The 4th claim against Christmas by Kevin Reed here, and he's done some research. Christmas observance undermines the sanctity of the Lord's Day.
But that's not in Scripture, so that...
Well, I'm just telling you, this is his. I'm not saying I agree with him. I'm just telling you this is his. Number 5, the institution of Christmas assumes an erroneous view of church power. And he goes on to say, men do not have the right or authority to sanctify other days for stated religious observances. So there's that really goes back to the first one, that all worship should be God ordained. And then the 6th one, further, Christmas constitutes a false sacrament. Basically, the idea of a separate mass or sacrament that somehow is Christmas as a sacrament. 7, Christmas is a source of great misinformation and accessory abuses. So he says distortions of the facts. For example, pictures of the wise men in a manger. Obviously, they're taking something that happened later, the wise men, and they put it at the manger, right? And so it actually distorts the story. But the big one, he says, with this is that all the numerous manger scenes, quote, manger scenes and religious images erected in public spaces, etc., this is a multiplication of graven images, quote, blatant violation of the second commandment, which explicitly forbids making or using any pictorial representations of God. So this is, again, these are the core claims against Christmas by the, I would say, neo or purist Presbyterian view as expressed by Kevin Reed. So he's got violation through imagery, violation of a commandment, violation of instituting new worship, a Trojan horse for paganism, and too much association with Rome.
See, I'm on board with him on probably about 50 to 60% of what he said. But this is not the meat of the argument.
Okay, so that's basically that first part of what I wanted to go over. It was just there's strong, in the Reformed tradition, strong
opposition.
However, I would probably guess, I've attended Presbyterian churches before. It's been years and years and years, but I would imagine that they're going to have Christmas, just like any other, evangelical church probably does.
I went to a Methodist church on Sunday.
Yeah, did they have?
It was interesting. It was.
They have a Christmas tree up.
I gotta say, this is off topic, but I gotta say they did have a Christmas tree up, and they had their little Christmas pageant or whatever. I have to admit, going to a congregation where our service ranges usually from about 3 hours to 3.5 hours, depending, and people stay at the shul basically all day long. We eat 2 meals together, and so on and so forth. Going to a service that is an hour long, I mean, it's like I get there and I feel like
I just got here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, where's everybody going? I feel like the sermon is like an introduction. You know what I mean? But
yeah. Well, you're used to having a big meal of spiritual.
That is
food.
For sure. Okay, let's move on to the real meat of it, man. Because
okay, so that was basically.
I'm getting bored here.
Part 2. So we all can see there's resistance to Christmas in the Reformed tradition, and it doesn't appear to be much before that we can find. Now let's shift to what Caleb thinks is our main course: basic history. So when and why did December 25th become associated, or rather, I should say it the other way around. When did Jesus' birthday become associated with December 25th? Was it religious syncretism? Has to do with astronomy and science of the stars, or does it have to do with the early apostles actually handed it down as a tradition?
Okay, I got a quote here from this. So let's set up the argument a little bit. This is from this article by Stephen Hidgmans.
Probably Hymans.
Hymans, okay. So this is on page 378 for anybody who is following along and has downloaded said article. He says, it is usually suggested that establishing a feast day on the birthday of Christ became important as a result of doctrinal disputes concerning the human and divine natures of Christ. So this kind of sets up for us what this scholar here is proposing. There had been, I'm going to go on with his quote and then maybe we'll clarify. There had been numerous groups that argued for a strong distinction between the human and divine. For example, in the 2nd century, the Basilidians, I'm saying that wrong, taught that the divine Christ appeared on Epiphany to reside temporarily in the body of the human Christ. In their view, the date of birth of a human Jesus was of no interest, as he was only temporarily host to the divine Christ. Now we're talking, this is me talking.
And this goes back, Caleb, what you were talking earlier. The Epiphany was already celebrated.
Correct. So the Epiphany was on January 7th.
And the Epiphany
January 7th.
Is associated with
the Spirit coming. The Spirit
What's
coming down. It's associated with the Spirit coming down as a dove when Christ was baptized. That's the Epiphany.
But I also saw somewhere where it's associated with the wise men visiting the baby, like that he has appeared to the nations, like that it has to do with.
Yeah, but they say that it was both, right? They say that it was both.
Yeah, okay. Well, and this follows in the line of remembering significant dates. Remembering significant dates in recent history was not crazy. I mean, we've talked about before with, I think last week, with the Megillat Ta'anit, the scroll of fasting, has a whole bunch of days that were to be annually celebrated by, in a way, it's kind of like a negative celebration. It's not that there was an active feasting, but it was a forbidding to fast or to eulogize.
But let's go on with, I want to go on with this quote
Okay.
because we're still framing this argument, the argument that he's making. 2 centuries later, I'm going on with his quote here. 2 centuries later, the Manichaeans went further, claiming that Jesus either was not born at all, or in any case did not take flesh of the Virgin Mary, but simply appeared among men on Epiphany. One can easily imagine how the Feast of Epiphany could be linked exclusively to the divine aspect of Christ, which was somehow revealed on January 6th.
Because the word epiphany means revealed.
Yes.
Or appeared. Yeah.
If the church were to celebrate Epiphany only, but not the birth of Christ, that could be seen to emphasize that there was indeed a distinction of importance between the two natures of Christ, human, birth unimportant, and divine, Epiphany, important. Developing a feast of the birthday of Christ was a reaction to these views, counteracting such dichotomies by stressing the importance of the physical birth of Jesus. But why was the birth date set on December 25th rather than March 28th? Okay, let's recap.
You
let's
kind of jump the gun.
Okay, let's recap for just a second though. Okay.
What he's saying, he's not saying that this is his claim. He's saying it is usually suggested that. So this whole paragraph is the author saying this is a common.
See, but I don't know. I see what he's saying is that I think that he's taking the view that they were fighting a form of Gnosticism.
I think that is part of it. That's not all of it.
Okay, but
for this guy,
I agree. But I think that he also holds to the claim that they were that the Christians in the whatever century, and we'll talk about that in a few seconds, 1st, 2nd, 3rd century, were fighting some form of Gnosticism that was not only growing but was becoming quite prevalent, and that what they were saying was what the Gnostics were saying was, look, all things physical are bad, and Jesus Christ, he's the same. His physical body, bad. Sin, bad. Right?
No, he didn't have. The Docetists say that he only appeared, it only seemed like he had a physical body.
Okay, yeah, but other forms of Gnosticism, I agree with you completely.
Right.
But other forms of Gnosticism were saying, yeah, Jesus Christ, the human, was born sometime, but nobody cares about that because it wasn't really God. It wasn't God on earth. That was just some human dude that was born. But then when the Epiphany happened, what happened? Christ comes down, he indwells this shell of a body, and now you have God on earth.
Okay. So, and we're dating all these. This all happens basically when? Early 4th century. When you have all these kind of clashing against each other, right?
But you have
these different views.
I agree, but you have forms of Gnosticism earlier than the third,
No, I get it.
4th century.
My point is, though, all these different views come to a clash by the year 300. These things are all, you have the development of these different groups that have these different ways of envisioning who Yeshua is. Was he just a man that was baptized and received the Holy Spirit? Was he not really human at all? Was he like some divine being that was never truly human? And you have different groups that have developed different ways of thinking it, and they kind of all develop separately over the centuries, and then by the year early 300s, that's when, at least in literary record, we can actually see them clashing with
Okay,
each
but
other.
let's bring to light a little bit more what's going on here. This author is basically, now correct me if I'm wrong, this author is basically saying, look, December 25th was not a pagan festival, but rather the Christians chose it, and then the pagans adopted it as one of their holidays afterwards. Is that correct?
He's not making it that pointed. What Heisman's is saying, in my reading, is that Roman sun worship has been conflated in those in the history of religions camp who say, oh, they just create a headline that says Christmas is the adoption of the day of worship of the sun, Sol Invictus. And this guy, being a historian of Roman religion, if you look at all his publications, I mean, this guy is deep into it. He says, no, you're totally misrepresenting Roman religion, and therefore it's almost like back to the Duplo Lego, my argument. He's saying you're using Duplo Legos to portray, quote, paganism or sun worship. And there's really, if you get feet on the ground, there's a lot of things going on, and you got to put everything in its right place to have an accurate picture. That's what he's one of the things he accomplishes with this article.
See, I don't think that. I think that he proves the opposite point that he's trying to make. I think that within his article, he proves that the cult of soul worship was so large in the time that we finally have writing about it in the 300s, in the 4th century, and in the same document that you have attestation of the birth of Christ or the celebration of the birth of Christ on December 25th, you have the same attestation of the winter equinox and the worship of Sol and Sol Invictus on that time.
What Caleb's talking about there, we should just pause, is what's the chronograph of 354.
Correct.
It's called the calendar of 354. It's the earliest. Now, I think the earliest actual manuscript we have is like from the 1600s or 1700s. So we don't even have, but it's dated to the mid 4th century in terms of when the text was originally written. Obviously, we don't have the copy that was originally written. So it's dated to that time. And in that document, you can see it consists of 2 documents. One is a civil calendar, and another is a calendar of the martyrs. And the calendar of martyrs that's part of this chronograph of 354 is dated even older, but it was added to this civil calendar as a giant document for a wealthy Christian in Rome. In this document, in this section of the civil calendar, it has December 25th as a celebration of Sol Invictus, right, the invincible sun. In this other section of this chronograph, this history of the martyrs, it gives what they call 8 calends or whatever. It calculates to be December 25th as the birthday of Yeshua in Bethlehem of Judea. They're totally different. They're in different places of the book. They're completely far. They're not right next to each other. They're completely different. And scholars say that they're two different texts that have been put together, dated to the middle of the 4th century, and that they are unrelated. That's the earliest attestation that we have. What I get from this article is that this scholar is differentiating the cult of worshiping the Sol, the sun, God in Rome, from the idea of the sun in terms of its cycles, and in terms of the other planets and the moon that have been part of what becomes it's kind of the development of Greco-Roman science. It's an advance taken from what they've learned from Babylonian science, and they're kind of pushing. And of course, we know that astronomy and astrology were really kind of blended together at this time, because it was, and we know this even from the Second Temple Jewish world, from Qumran. They used the zodiac as a way to read people's character traits when they were born. So when people were born, in the Qumran library, we have documents. When people were born, what constellation was there, and where the stars were, was seen as,
they're using astronomy.
Yeah, there was a sign of what that person was going to be in their life. There's a sense of their lot, right, of their destiny. So this permeated even the most strict Jewish communities when it comes to purity laws and
okay, but hang on, just
views on the.
Let's go back.
Okay, Caleb.
Go ahead.
What?
Well, let's go back because
and then Josephus and Philo,
you're passing.
I want to talk about what
you're passing over all this though. I mean, this guy, you're making it as if he states it as fact and then it works. It doesn't work. He said he tries to bring up the fact that this was all just, that there's two different, there's the cult of Sol and all, they're using the planets and everything to worship, but then there's just this iconography that we see. They're just using it as a calendar. He doesn't prove that. In fact, I think just the opposite. He says that this is on page 190 or 394. He says the symbolic use of Sol and Luna was common in the wide range of religious contexts in the Roman Empire. We find it on Jupiter, Dolginus, triangles, Mithraic reliefs, so on. Okay, he said. Then later he says, in all these images, Sol is clearly not depicted as a god to be celebrated with feast days and chariot races, but as a cosmic body whose presence contributes to the framing and defining of the nature of the main scene. Now, down below, the way that he justifies that is he says, it is also those aspects of Sol which are important in, for instance, the mosaic floors of the late antique synagogues of Hamath Tiberias, Beth Alpha, and elsewhere. In the large central panel of the floor of the main nave, we find Sol in the traditional Roman iconography on a frontal chariot in a zodiac and with the four seasons in the corners. Here, too, Sol is the anthropomorphic representation of the visible planet, and as much is a cosmic symbol rather than a polytheistic god. Says who?
I agree with him.
No. Says who?
Yeah, because what you're doing, you're looking at the synagogue floor, and you're saying they must have been worshiping the sun.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that.
You are. That's what he's saying. You can't
listen.
Do that.
No,
you
listen.
Have to accept
hang
the
on.
fact that,
hang on. Listen
okay,
to what. Listen to what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they were sitting there worshiping Sol, but what I'm saying is that the culture around them certainly was, and they were borrowing things from paganism. They didn't just put them on the floor because they thought, oh yeah, a good calendar imagery here.
But no. Caleb, there's no such thing as paganism. They didn't borrow something from pagan. There wasn't like a pagan.
What are you talking about?
Paganism. They're just like, it's just the same thing as why we say that you have to be careful using the word Judaism. Paganism. That's just, it means some other thing.
I know, some other thing besides the true religion, right?
We need to be more precise. I'm arguing that we need to be more precise than paganism.
You can't say there's no such thing as paganism. There certainly is such thing as paganism.
No, it's like a blanket statement to
okay.
cover a whole bunch of diverse things.
Sure.
I'm saying it's not helpful to say paganism isn't helpful for me in my thinking.
Why not?
Because I look at we can find it in the Babylonian Talmud. We can find it in the synagogue floors. We find the
You're talking about the iconography now.
The iconography, and the language. In the Talmud, they use the word tekufot, calculation of the solstices.
Yeah,
is important for determining Passover, determining that whether you're going to add a 13th month, and our Adar Bet is based on calculating the solstices.
Is anyone else thinking that Rob's proving my point? You're proving my point here.
My point is that this was science. This was not seen. It was starting to separate as science independent of cults of worship.
When you have synagogues in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd century that have
no, it's not till 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th century.
Okay, still, synagogues. Even then, you have 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th century synagogues that have the zodiac with the sun and the moon in the middle.
There's many of them. There's several of them.
Exactly. There's like 4 of them.
All in the land of Israel.
Yeah,
and they're Jewish synagogues.
Yeah, exactly. And you're saying that this had nothing to do with paganism, or nothing to do with a religious cult outside of the.
No, it had to do with what they think was their conception of the world, scientific world.
You prove it. You can't prove that.
Because I look at how, I look at Philo. Philo mentions the zodiac.
Exactly.
Josephus. They even say that the 12 zodiacs were like on one of the curtains in the temple. Josephus does.
Once again,
okay. The reason why
is
because they don't see it. They see it as representing as God, creator of all things, and ever since the Babylonian times, people had been watching the heavens and seeing the cycles and starting to record the repetition of the cycles.
Okay, hang on,
and trying to make sense of it. And they believed that God had made the universe as a giant kind of like it's where the idea of clock comes from, of a timekeeper, is they see the whole universe as a representative of keeping of time, and they see it as God created. God created it. They're just recording it and mapping it out.
Okay, but once again, you're not doing justice to all the information, because Qumran certainly used it as something saying that it helped in predestination.
True, but they didn't worship the sun.
I'm not saying they worship the sun. I'm saying they borrowed this. They borrowed.
They didn't worship the Taurus or whatever.
They
used it as a science. I'm arguing that they saw it as what we would call today as kind of a scientific mode of thinking.
That's not all. That's not all how they use it, though. And we see that in Qumran. Qumran certainly puts more of a emphasis on it than just and not only that, but the fact that you have the zodiac in the exact same form as we would see in other non-Jewish. I
get that. I'm not disputing that this is but this is all over the place. So I'm saying
exactly my point.
It's a shared. It's just like the internet. It's a shared cultural map of the world.
Okay, but
it's an attempt to map the heavens and the earth and understand their relationship.
But you have this huge cult of soul, and this author even admits that it goes back many years before the third century.
No. Okay, here I'm going to read a little bit from 384.
So hang on. Let's ask real quick, Rob. What are you trying to accomplish in the argument? What is your point of view here?
What I agree with this author. I'm convinced by his argument that if we're going to look at soul worship in Rome, sun worship, we're not going to look at December 25th. We're going to find a whole bunch of other dates. August 8th, August 9th, August 28th, December 11th. These are all associated in ancient Rome with the feast day for soul. It's not until this document, 354, that there was ever a hint of soul worship being associated with December 25th. That's his point. He says you can't just make that the day of worship of soul, when in fact all the calendars from older times have soul worship of soul associated with completely different dates. That's important to me, because I had taken it to be the picture I had, and it was mistaken, was that December 25th was this Roman holiday worshiping soul, and the Christians came and put a new label on it. That's the picture I had,
and that's the picture. No, it's not wrong.
Yeah, that's wrong. Totally wrong.
No, it's not. He proves it in his own article.
No.
Hey, look, let's ask this.
You should write a response article.
Why do you have Aurelius putting an entire building an entire temple in the 270s to Seoul?
Yeah, and what were the dates? October 19th through 22nd.
But my point,
the dates associated of the worship in honor of Soul was in October.
You just said that the zodiac was this huge thing within all forms of not just the Jewish sect, but within all of culture in the first century. You're telling me that the winter solstice was
between basically from Babylonian times up through where we're talking about, the first couple centuries. Yeah.
So 400 BCE. 400 BCE.
Yeah, up through 4th, 5th, 6th centuries, that the zodiac was understood as a kind of budding scientific frontier.
And you're telling me that it wasn't just the zodiac. So the worship of Sol was a huge cult. And he proves this.
The rabbis take calculation of the solstices, the equinoxes, etc., as critical for timekeeping.
Okay,
and they have a word tekufa for the solstice.
But long before
is the winter solstice.
Long before Christ was on earth, is what I'm saying. Is that the cult of Sol certainly was not only worshiping, but was attributing the zodiac to Luna and Sol. He says right here, he says, Sol was already portrayed on one of the earliest coins minted by Rome and continued to appear on Roman state coins for the next 500 years. sporadically until the late 2nd century AD. So now he's placing that at AD 300, and almost annually, often with multiple issues in one year. That means that it was a huge cult. It was a huge thing from the reign of Commodus until the reign of Constantine. In the art, the iconography of the Roman soul was firmly established well before the destruction of Pompeii. And
Absolutely.
And Pompeii was destroyed in 79.
That. I think that's good information.
And Pompeii was destroyed in 79 AD. Okay.
None of it has to do with December 25th.
Likewise, the inscription. What I'm saying is that you have Sol as a major cult all the way from 300 BCE. He says 300 BCE all the way up until 200 AD. Okay, so
he will not. He's not going to say it's a major cult. He's going to say it's a major icon. But there's other icons that are equally, plus the days of the week, for example, is the biggest institution where there's a 7-day cycle, each which has a different pantheon that's reflected.
Wait, hang on a sec. Going on, he says, likewise, the inscriptions, soul occurs in inscriptions, soul occurs regularly through the centuries without any break or hiatus, nor with any indication of radical change in his nature. You're telling me that wasn't a major? That wasn't a major cult. That wasn't a major deity
there's no data for the when you say cult. Okay, let's make sure. Cult means you have instituted priesthood and regular worship and sacrifice. That's what we need to determine. He's not arguing that Sol was all over the place, as was Luna, as were the planets represented in the days of the week. All these things were all over the place. But when you demonstrate, when you're talking about worship of the sun as a deity, and that you have a priesthood and sacrifice and all this kind of stuff, that is difficult. And then when we don't have any in any event, whether there was a cult or not, December 25th was not part of what was being propagated. So let me just finish off one thing. We've already talked about the December 25th website that we had. He's arguing that December 25th comes down from the apostles, which I think that's crazy. I don't think there's any way we can show that. I think that's so that's the view that takes it as apostolic tradition. Syncretism seems to be Caleb's perspective. Caleb, it seems like you're saying there's a syncretism here, where you take two different religious traditions and you mix them together and make a new one. And then I come from the third. I come from the astronomical scientific, and I'll tell you why. Because I believe that in these early church fathers, like 2nd, 3rd, 4th century, they are dealing, like you pointed out right at the beginning, they're dealing with certain groups that are disputing the nature of Yeshua. Is he all God? Is he all man? Or is he both? And they want to assert that he was born. Okay? He's the most important person ever to be born on the planet. They want to affirm that he was born in the flesh, but that he was also 100% God. How can they do that? Well, before they even chose a date, they already had a tradition of associating Yeshua with the passage in Malachi where it says, Shemesh Tzedakah, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings. It's an amazing study I've been thinking about. I mean, it's worthy of a book in itself.
That wasn't...
Let me finish.
Wait, hang on. They didn't attribute that until late.
Let me finish.
But wait, you can't just skim over something.
Dates. I'm going to give you dates. I'm setting it up. They attribute... We have church fathers from 2nd century on attributing Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings. Passage in Malachi, which in Greek is Helios for Shemesh, because Shemesh is the name of a Babylonian deity. So the word Shemesh is there in Hebrew, name of a deity, Helios in Greek, and soul, it's translated soul in the Vulgate, in Latin translations. That's from Tanakh, and that is associated by early Christians with Yeshua. Now, that's the first thing that happens. Then there is the development of the science of the stars. This is my construction. This is what I believe. And you can let me finish, and I'll hear you out. We have in the 200s, the De Pascha Computus book. I didn't find out who wrote it, but he says that Messiah was born on March 28th, and this is why. Because they saw, just as some of the rabbis did, that creation was at some of the rabbis say the creation started in Nisan 1, some say Tishri 1. This 3rd century, so they associate it with the early 200s, that Messiah was born on the 4th day of creation, meaning that the solstice, where the day and light were equal, which is the spring. They call it the spring equinox, where daylight and dark are of equal time. That is when God created the world, and then they counted 4 days to the 28th, where the sun was created, and they say that would be the day when Yeshua was born, and they associate it with the passage from Malachi, because they see it as a prophecy. The sun will rise. They believe that's Messiah. They associate it with a cosmic event where dark and light are of equal, day and light are of equal time. And then they count the days of Bereshit from there, the 4th day. That's where March 28th came from. The second one, dating from the 4th century, says the same thing, but associates it with December 25th. For the same reason, though, because they say the sun, it's the day where the days start getting longer, and that is the midrashic application of the sun will rise with healing in his wings. So what I see is a development of a midrashic reading of the Malachi passage associated with Yeshua, trying to be associated with what they would consider the science of the heavens. That's where it comes from. It has nothing to do with what pagans were doing. It has to do with charting the stars and trying to anchor a flesh and blood birth for the Son of God, associated with the passage from Malachi, the sun will rise with healing in his wings, which had the word Shemesh, Helios, and soul all associated, having nothing to do with the pagan use of the word soul or the pagan use of the word Helios, but associated with the science of the stars. That's where December 25th came from, in terms of associating it with
but that's you are making a huge assumption. There is a huge assumption there that they didn't that it wasn't based on paganism. Listen to what he says. He admits.
I don't think it has anything to do with paganism.
He admits. Okay, he basically says exactly what you just said, that it doesn't have anything to do with paganism, even though the pagans were certainly. Listen to what he says. This is his conclusion. It is cosmic symbolism of this type which inspired the church leadership in Rome to elect the winter solstice, December 25th, as the birthday of Christ, and the summer solstice, June 25th, as that of John the Baptist, supplemented...
That's just going to be 6 months out of phase.
Correct.
That's a given. If one's one has to be other.
Supplemented by the equinoxes as their respective dates of conception, while they were aware that pagans celebrated a festival in honor of Sol Invictus on that day. This did not concern them. No, he doesn't. No, he's
that last statement, because we don't know. We don't have any evidence. He's stretching right there. We don't have any evidence that Christians in the early 3rd century believed that. We don't know what they thought about pagans celebrating on the 25th. We don't have any data for that. He's stitching this together, and I don't agree with that last statement. But I do agree with this. Here's another place where they use midrash. They say December 25th is when light is increasing. 6 months after June 25th, where light is decreasing, and they see that as a midrash on where John the Baptist says, "I must decrease and he must increase." My point is, it's a midrashic. They arrive at December 25th as the birth of Christ.
Why wouldn't they choose the Epiphany?
Midrashic means it has nothing to do with paganism. Nothing to do with paganism.
I don't see how you can say that.
Yeah,
I don't understand how you can say that.
I said it.
Well, yeah, but obviously the data is there that soul worship was huge, and
no.
Yes, he proves it.
Huge on other days of the year. Yeah, huge in October.
So wait, hang on. Let me see. Let me hang on just a second. Let me just see if I got this right. You're telling me that the cult of soul, or the religion of soul, had these huge festivals on other days, and that it was a well-established religious institution before the 1st century, up into the 2nd and 3rd century AD, correct?
Sure, and I would agree that there were Christians that knew that the Romans worshipped a guy called Sol, the Sol, sun god, but they also had their Tanakh scripture with Malachi saying the soul.
You're saying
will
it was,
rise. And they knew that they were different. They knew that the soul in their Latin translation of Malachi was not the same soul, S-O-L, word for sun, that those guys are worshiping. He knew that they would have known that was they were different.
You are stretching so far. You're making so many assumptions. How are you making that assumption? That they would that they.
You're saying okay. What I'm hearing you say is that Roman believers in Yeshua, who had the book of Malachi in Latin, and they see the word soul, the soul will rise, S-O-L.
You don't have that midrash until late. You don't have that until late, though. You don't have that midrash until way later.
Caleb, the midrash is older than this chronograph of 354 by over 100 years.
But not by being linked to December 25th.
No, we have it linked first to spring. That's the point. The point is the midrash of Malachi is taking precedent. That's what they're not going to let go of. They're not going to let go of that Messiah is the Shemesh Tzedakah in Malachi. That's the core. And in Greek, that was Helios. In Rome, they would have understood that to be soul. But when they read Malachi, they weren't thinking, oh, this is what the pagans are worshiping. No, they knew it was Messiah.
And that this is my point. You just said that they associated it with the date in March. So even Adam in the chat room says the date chosen is contrived. Why would they choose December 25th? The answer
it's midrashically derived. It's a combination of midrash and what they conceived like heavenly science, that God created the world, and that the cycles of the heavens were ordained by Him.
Or perhaps that maybe the worshippers of Sol had already contrived this. Since that
say that again. Say that.
Or that they just based it on the same midrash as exactly what the worshippers of Sol were saying.
No, we don't. That's the other thing. We don't have people saying that about Sol.
No, but the point is that
October and August, they have nothing to do with equinoxes or anything like that, and they're having the hugest feast days for Sol are on days that have no cosmic significance.
They obviously were aware, and I would say very aware of the equinoxes. The fact that they're worshiping the sun and the moon, and that the winter equinox is the lowest point when the sun is dark the most. Are you telling me that a religion that worshiped the sun and the moon 300 years before the Messiah showed up on Earth didn't say anything about the equinox?
Not in any source I know about.
I'm
that associate with Sol. We're talking about Sol. We have like when was Stonehenge made? Stonehenge up in England. I think that on the equinox, the sun comes up right
in the
precisely
middle,
between two things. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's before 100, right?
So we don't have any text for. We don't know. All we know is that we don't know if it was a calendar originally and then became religious or what. We don't have enough information. All we have is the stone.
But we know. See, once again, I would say that
What we can't show, we can't know.
But we can show it. I
can show you this, Caleb. I can show you that early Christians believed Malachi was talking about Yeshua. That's indisputable.
Yeah,
and I can show you.
Yeah, and attributed to March.
We have two early instances of people taking that basic prophetic connection and trying to map it onto their picture of heavenly science from the day. And you're saying they got it from paganism. I'm saying they could have easily got it from their own calculations of when the solstice is going to be. The rabbis.
Why would they put it on the solstice though? Why not in March when they thought he was actually born?
Because of the relationship between light and darkness.
That is such a weak argument.
They give the reason. I'm telling you their thought. Their thought is had to do with light. It had to do with an increase of light.
And you don't think that it had to do with the influence of paganism into the culture? I mean, look at
no, I don't think it has to do with paganism.
I think it absolutely does. Look at the floors of the synagogue. Look at the floors of the synagogue.
So they were worshiping Helios.
I think that there was significant.
That you're telling me that the Jews with all those synagogues with the beautiful mosaics of zodiac were worshiping Helios.
Right,
I could say that's what you're saying.
No, you couldn't, because that's not what I'm saying.
You're making the same claim.
No. Okay, let me ask you this: Are the Christians today, when they have Christmas trees in their church, are they worshiping the Christmas tree?
I would say no, but other people would say probably yes.
Okay, so my point is that they hang on just a
yes.
second. Hang on just a sec. Now the point is that what I'm saying is that the synagogue certainly was influenced by the religions around them, and they brought the zodiac and the iconography from what I'm going to call a other religion or a pagan religion. They brought into the synagogue, just like today we have the Christian church bringing in.
Actually, you know what? There could be another reason for the synagogue mosaics with the zodiac. It could be like a really good salesman who had a cool design, and he went around. And he said, "Hey, I've got the workers.
Don't you want this in your synagogue?"
and they're like, "Okay, cool. We need a floor, and we need it done cheaply. Just make it look nice."
Look, the point is that we even see it today. That certainly, the Christian church by even the 2nd century, you have people giving up on Torah and all sorts of things. By the 3rd, 4th, and 5th century, when you have these mosaics, what has happened? Are you? I mean, we even have it today with the Christian church.
They see it as a science of God creating the heaven.
You are assuming that. That is an assumption.
You interview Lee Levine from Hebrew University, ancient synagogue. He's like the foremost authority on synagogues. I saw his paper presentation at SBL. They had a whole group of top-notch Jewish scholars giving papers on Lee Levine's work. Time and again, they make the same point. So if you can argue with me about that, but you're also going to be arguing with Lee Levine and these other Jewish Israeli archaeologists who have done all the excavating and all the work on these mosaics. They're going to tell you the same thing. They're going to say this was not religious. This was seen. It was only religious. I'll qualify. Only religious to the degree that it reflected how the cosmos was conceived by people throughout the Greco-Roman world, and they saw that as reflecting in one nutshell, God creating the heavens and the earth, and they put that in the mosaic floor to celebrate it.
Okay, and my point is this: that no matter what, you still have pagan imagery in a synagogue. Just like you do in the churches today. You have pagan imagery of a Christmas tree, wreaths, and mistletoe.
Okay, fine. Yeah, yes, the imagery we would say is non-Jewish.
Okay.
Right? I would agree with this. Except, here's the difficulty. The difficulty is we can't say it's Greek. We can't say it's Roman. We'd have to say it's Babylonian. Because even in the book of Job, he talks about Aries or Pleiades and Orion and the bear, right? He's talking about Mazalot, or it's called Matzarot in Job, or the constellations. So the idea of associating the heavenly, kind of a scientific or looking at the heavens with specific constellations and zodiac in mind goes back to Tanakh as well. So are we going to say that's pagan influence on Job, the book of Job?
What I'm saying is, hang on just a second.
I'd say it's a larger kind of scientific world. Of course, they didn't use the word science. I know that, but what we would call astronomical science.
And what I'm saying is if they're willing to incorporate pagan imagery, even if they don't see it as pagan imagery into their very synagogues, why wouldn't they be willing to adopt pagan festivals and make them their own? That's the point. They have brought the zodiac, a pagan imagery, into the synagogues in the 3rd and 4th century.
That's a fair question. And I have one more thing that I wanted to share on this, is that in the Babylonian Talmud, in the tractate of Avodah Zarah, or in good Ashkenazi you'd say Avodah Zarah, which is the tractate of the Mishnah on strange worship. That's what Avodah Zarah means, is strange worship.
I'm sorry, you said Babylonian Talmud?
Yeah, the Babylonian Talmud.
Okay.
They talk about the 8-day feasts that were before the solstice and 8-day feasts that were after. So they're talking about Saturnalia, which is 8-day feast before the winter solstice. And they say, the Babylonian Talmud, the Gemara, says that it was originally created by Adam, that Adam instituted this feast. But then it became paganized. The pagans took it over and made it something it wasn't supposed to be.
Yeah, but obviously...
Now, I'm telling you, okay, so this is the same time frame, 4th, 5th, 6th century. It's across all these different traditions. We have the same basic deal.
But in the 6th century, you have people from the church saying that Christmas was taken from pagan tradition.
No, we don't have that till the earliest I think we have is 10th century. I think earlier I misspoke. I was thinking in terms of the Reformed tradition. But yeah, there is a criticism in the 10th century text, and the one guy quotes this, the Syriac.
Well, Chrysostom. Doesn't Chrysostom say? I'm pretty sure Chrysostom says something about them borrowing the winter solstice, the worship of a different god. Why? And here's another question: by the time you have the document from 354, he says that they have already instituted huge chariot races and all sorts of stuff as on the winter equinox. In celebration of Sol.
No, it says that 30. Yeah, but those other days, those August and October days, have way even bigger celebrations associated with Sol.
but so what you're telling me is that they just all of a sudden decided, 3rd century, hey, let's start having chariot races on the winter solstice.
I'm convinced by this guy's article, the Stephen Heijmans, if we're saying that right. If we're not, I'm sorry, Mr. Heijmans. He says, with the data given, if we're going to use just weights and measures, we can't say who influenced who, because there's not enough data to say the Christians borrowed it from the pagans, and there's not enough data to say the pagans borrowed it from the Christians. It's like at a standstill. That's his point.
I would strongly disagree with that, but you know
That's
what?
fine.
We can agree to disagree. All
I
right.
love it. Good discussion.
Hey, man. I hope you have a good Festivus.
Festivus. I'm not going to do so well on the feats of strength, though.
I think that Festivus is over. Isn't Festivus normally on December 21st, or is it the 20? Is it today?
No, Festivus is. I think it's just the season, isn't it?
No. It's okay. Fun fact.
We're talking Jerry Stiller here.
Fun Seinfeld fact. Festivus was actually celebrated by one of the writers. His father made it up. It was an actual made-up festival.
Larry David or whatever.
No, it wasn't Larry David. It was a different one. But they talk about how it was ridiculous and all that kind of stuff. But that's why they wrote there was a specific date. I think it was December 21st. Might have been Festivus. Either that or it was the 23rd.
So just to wrap up, we'll be clear. Caleb, this was a great discussion. I appreciate it. I like the back and forth. We usually don't have the opportunity to have
disagreements,
opposing views, so this is really cool. But basically, in a nutshell, I will say I believe that December 25th was adopted primarily based on the Midrash from Malachi, Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings, and then early attempts to try to associate that with the nature of the sun going through its cycles in the heavens, initially as spring equinox, and then finally getting settled as the winter solstice. And having to do with verses like increase and decrease and stuff like that. What I'm hearing your viewpoint is no, I'm missing the data. It's actually adopted from that the pagan, there was a big cult of Sol, worshiping Sol on the 25th, and what Christians wanted to do. And I don't think you're denying the fact that they felt compelled to come up with a birthday because they felt pressured to come up with a birthday to assert incarnation.
I will even concede, Rob. I will even concede that that the 25th was probably not by any means the largest of the festivals within Seoul. The other thing that we have to take into consideration, this is something that I'll look at this week and try to bring maybe next week, is we know that there were other festivals that very possibly might have come after this, but I want to do research to see when because there were other festivals that went on December 23rd and the week prior to December 23rd that we have in historical documents. Now I don't think that they're that old. I don't think they're as old, but that's what I need to look into. So I would say I think that they chose the winter equinox because even though it might not have been the major festival of Seoul, which probably was done in August 22nd, I think, and I think October was another one.
Yeah, there's a clusters of them for some reason.
But I don't think it was the largest festival, but I think that they certainly were doing something on the winter equinox.
Yeah, I don't dispute that some people were doing something on that. Oh, by the way, we never talked about, in the Julian calendar, it is December 25th and March 25th are equinoxes, and then later it slowly moves to December 21st, just so people understand. People say, well, 25th isn't even the solstice, because I said equinox, I meant solstice.
Yeah, I think I used
it's the 21st, 22nd, and so there's variance because the Julian calendar gets overridden, and the calendar keeps getting refined. So we're dealing with astronomical science, calendrical science, and that's my orientation to the data. Caleb's, you're coming from you're looking at the power of influence of the different pagan groups and their worship as an influence. And I think I'm leaning more towards the one and you're to the other, but somewhere the truth is in there.
All right. Well, we hope that you enjoyed the look that we had at December 25th. Whether or not you think that it was adopted one way or the other from one group or the other, I think that the main thing you should be thinking of on December 25th this year will be preparation for the Shabbat, which will be that night at sunset, because that certainly is sanctioned by God in the Torah and in the Bible. I would say it's even sanctioned in the apostolic scriptures in Acts 15, correct?
Oh, that reminds me, Caleb. I was kicked out of that one.
Yeah, I know. We'll talk.
So yeah, we just real quick. Final. This is a PSS, right? Postscript script. Because I know you started the music, but we were invited to a reformed.
Should I stop the music? Okay, I'll stop the music. Go for it.
Invited to a reformed blog by Rob and some others, and I jumped in. I was like, okay, cool. I'll check it out. And Caleb informed me I was booted out, but I brought up. I said, the Shabbat is the most mentioned commandment in the New Testament. It's mentioned like 80 times or whatever, being observed.
They did not because I don't know why. I don't know why they booted you. You didn't say anything of you weren't arguing with anybody.
No, the one lady. The only time they might think I was being argumentative. One lady's like, well, God. She said that's why Jesus had to die. That's why we need God's grace. Is because He gave the law and no one can keep the law. And I said no. We don't need God's grace because of that. That is making it sound like Jesus was plan B. Like plan A was God gives the Torah. Well, they fail, so God has to come up with an alternative route to salvation. I said, no, that's not right. And she's like, well, you're misunderstanding. I'm like, no, when you use the word why, this is why we need God's grace. It's like, no, that's not why. God is gracious from the beginning all the way to the end. He is gracious.
I'm pretty sure I got booted too. Because I can't find it either.
Anyway,
I can't find the group either.
Thanks to those brothers who invited us in there, but and I don't mind getting kicked out. It's neither here nor there. But I was talking about Textus Receptus and Masoretic, and I think it quickly got beyond their capacity to talk intelligently.
Yeah, I got booted too. I'm not on here anymore. I don't believe. So,
okie doke. Anyway.
All right, hang on. I'm going to start the music back up. Should I start it? Okay. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Send us an email, chag@torahresource.com, rvanhoff@torahresource.com. Check us out on Facebook, all that kind of good stuff. And, no matter what you're doing on December 25th, we hope that whatever it is you're doing, it will honor our great God and Savior, Yeshua. the Messiah.